Okay, so it looks like I'm live. This is Sunday, the 27th of June, and I just wanted to raise an issue. About 6 months ago, I made a post about free will, and I had a lot of Christians coming on, some of them agreeing, some of them not agreeing. And I did a little challenge to a friendly debate stroke discussion on the subject. I really wanted to find someone that didn't believe, or did believe rather, that we had free will, to have that discussion. And while one or two um, did say that they did believe that we had free will, they weren't prepared to have that discussion debate. So it never happened. So I'm hoping that I'm just going to say a little bit today, and I'm hoping that maybe someone will take up the challenge and have a debate on it. So I'm not going to say too much, but I'm just going to lay the groundwork for my position. I believe that the Bible teaches that we do not have free will very clearly. It's just incredible to me that anybody who believes the Bible thinks that we have free will. However, there's some good people that do, so I have to accept that, and therefore want to raise it as a question. Okay, so I'm just trying to turn something off, turn that message off. There you go. So it's not scrolling by the whole way through. So I suggested in the description that if you're not a Bible believer, that maybe this isn't for you, because I don't really want to get into debate about whether to trust the Bible or not. So I'm trying to have a debate on those who already trust the Bible and they're going to accept that as the authority on these issues. So I think one of the problems with debating the issue of free will is that often I think people actually have a different understanding of what free will is. So sometimes you're debating because you have a different grasp of the definition of free will. So I think it's probably a good idea to begin with some kind of definition as to what we're talking about when we say free will. So if someone comes up to you with a gun and says your money or your life, you have a choice, right? You can give them your money, or you can take your chances with the man with the gun. Um, that's a choice. Nobody can argue that that's not a choice. But is it a free choice? And clearly, it's not a free choice because it's under duress, right? So anything that you do under duress is not a free choice. Right now, there's a lot of discussion about whether or not you take a particular medication for a particular thing, and there's lots of coercion going on, and censorship about all the facts that result in it not being a free choice at all for many people. Many people feel pressured one way or the other, and they're also being kept in the dark about all the true facts. So when you're making a choice out of ignorance and you don't know the consequences, again, not really a free choice. So there's different ways where or different situations where we have choices and they're not really free. Now, some of us, I don't particularly have a problem with weight. There's been times in my life when I've carried a little more than I would like, but I think we all know the experience of making a choice to not eat foods that are bad for us in one way or other. It might be gaining weight, it might be too much sugar or other rubbish. We make a choice. And then we find sometimes that we run into a problem because our will, our mind says one thing, but we have other things going on that give us biases, such as addictions. An addiction would be a strong bias, right? So we have biases that pull us in a particular direction so that we might choose one thing, but our bias might be strong enough to cause us to do something else. So we often will find ourselves doing things that we don't want to do. Our will is thwarted by these other influences in our life, such as the desire to taste whatever the food is or to experience the pleasure of whatever it might be. So all these choices. So when a heroin addict chooses heroin, maybe the first time, maybe he had a relatively free choice, although I would argue probably not. But maybe he had a free choice. But once you're addicted, it's no longer a free choice, right? So when we're talking about free choice, we're talking about a choice whereby you have no coercion in any direction. You could choose left or right equally. There's no pressure on you to choose left, no pressure on you to choose right. You could literally choose either with equal, um, you know, with an equal sort of thinking. You're not being bent one way or the other. So you have no bias. You have no coercion. Um, when you have that, and you have the power to do it, it's no good if you say, right, I choose left, but you can't go left. Like I could say, oh, I choose to be the president of the USA. I might choose that. That might be. I could have maybe a free choice, but my will would choose it. But I don't have the power to actually do it. So you also have to have the power to carry out the choice. Otherwise, it's useless, right? So all of those things taken into account, then the question is, do human beings have free choice about the big issues? So I'm not saying do I have the choice to go that or that. Yeah, I have that choice. That's a nothing choice. But the serious, the big questions, for example, whether to become a Christian or not, do we have a free choice to do that? That's the big question um, that many Christians struggle with. Do we choose God freely, or does God choose us? And all of that comes into play. So I want to think about a few things. I want you to think about a few things that the Bible teaches us that are not debatable. So the first thing that the Bible teaches us that I think is fundamental to this question is that all human beings are born following Adam, after Adam. All human beings since the fall are born slaves to sin. Okay? So we're all born slaves to sin. Now, by default, a slave is someone who's not free. And in the particular area of freedom that we're talking about is sin here. So that means that all human beings being slaves to sin cannot not sin. Now, again, there might be some sins, let's say you're not a slave to. So let's take homosexuality as an example. I'm not affected by that at all. It doesn't that particular sin doesn't tempt me at all. But lying, or let's say with the sexual side of things. So most most people, even if so, homosexuality is a sin, but so is all sex outside of marriage. Most people, nearly everyone, is tempted to that at some point in their lives. Okay, that's a sin. Um, but everybody has different sins that they're attracted to, and sometimes those sins might change over the course of their life. They might have a particular thing that's a sin that they're attracted to at one point, and not at other points of their life. So depending on their circumstances, stealing might be something. If you're comfortable, you don't have any attraction, but if you're starving, then there's going to be a strong appeal to do that. The point is that as slaves to sin, you cannot not sin. Okay, you can't. You don't have a choice to not sin. You might have a choice to not do a particular sin in a particular moment. Okay, but you don't have a choice not to sin. You don't. Okay, that's why there's nobody who's not sinned. Now, the outworking of that is that the Bible teaches very clearly is that actually we love sin and we hate righteousness. We love sin and we hate righteousness. Not all sin. We don't love all sin. Whatever sins it is that appeal to us, we love. And we hate righteousness. We love sin and we hate God. That's a fact. Okay? In fact, the Bible says that there is none that seek God, not one. Of course, if you hate God, you're not going to seek him. And since God is righteous and we hate righteousness, and since God demands righteousness of us and we love sin, we hate God, we hate righteousness, and we love darkness. The Bible teaches us all these things. These are not debatable. Okay? So if then you love something and you hate something else and you're giving a choice, is it a free choice? No, it's not. If you love one of the choices and hate the other choice, that's not a free choice. And actually, no one is going to choose the thing that they hate over the thing that they love. No one's going to do that. Who's going to do that? Now, this thing about being a slave to sin is part of our nature. Okay, so let me just talk a little bit about nature because all of our decisions come out of our nature. Let's move it away from humans a minute and use animals to explain the point. Let's imagine that you've got a hungry tiger. Okay, so here he is, a hungry tiger, and you have some food and you give him a choice. You have a big pile of raw steak and you have some cheesecake. So you give this tiger the choice. You put both in front of him. He has a choice. Is it a free choice? No, because his nature is going to determine which of those things he chooses. Just as our nature is going to determine whether we choose God or sin, Same thing here. He's going to choose a steak. That's his nature. He's a tiger. Okay, he's hungry. He's going to want the steak. He's not going to want the cheesecake or cookies or whatever else like that tigers don't eat. So then our nature is the prime factor in determining what we might choose. Okay, that is how it works throughout creation. The nature of the creature determines the choices. Okay, so the nature of man is fallen, okay, which means that the choices that we make are going to be in line with our fallen nature, which is why nobody seeks God, nobody chooses God. And yet people choose God. So how does that fit into the equation? Okay, and the Bible tells us about that. That's a choice. And I'm not going to go too much into that, but that's a choice because God first chooses some people and he changes their nature. And only when your nature's been changed, we talk about being born again or given a new heart, etc. Only when your nature is changed and now you love God and hate sin, or that gets more complicated with Christians because you actually have two natures at the same time for a while we're still alive. But so I don't want to get bogged down into that. But God changes your heart, and after He changes your heart, then you choose Him willingly because that's your new nature. So all of our choices on these type of issues come from our nature. So do we have free will? Absolutely not. We're either a slave to sin or we become, it uses the word servant usually in the scriptures about servant to Christ, but it's the same basic word of slave. We become a slave to Christ. We love Christ. We want to serve him. That's our heart now. It's our joy to please Christ, whereas before is our joy to fulfill our carnal desires, right? So that's the basic position between those that or those that like me believe we don't have free will. That's why we don't believe it. Now there's a lot of scriptures to that I could use, but I'm just trying to lay out the basic position. So and the reason I'm doing this, well, one, because there's a lot of Christians that have been misled to think we have free will. I like to challenge that thinking, get them to think. I'm hoping that maybe I'll find one who believes that we have free will, who will debate these issues with me, and then we can get into it, and people can. Sometimes you can learn better when you see both positions being argued back and forth, respectfully and with love, of course. Um, I'm in part making this video in the hopes of finding someone who's sitting there going, "Oh, that's wrong. What is he saying? That's terrible." And they really want to come back at me. I'm happy for that. So I'm putting a little challenge out there for somebody to come on live with me, not text back and forth over days and weeks, but to do a 20-minute live or whatever, 20-minute live, go back and we can, go back and forth on it and discuss this and search the scriptures as the Bereans and hopefully build us up and build a better understanding and help people learn what the scriptures teach on this issue. So there you go. As I say, very quick overview, and hopefully it will get just what I've already said. Will hopefully get a few people to think a little bit more deeply, to have a bit of a better grasp of what free will really means, and maybe it will end in a debate or discussion. Who knows? God bless everybody. Have a great Sunday.